Good afternoon, everybody. Destin from the Edison Exchange, and this is part 3 of our video about our visit to Vicksburg, Mississippi. In part 2, we talked about the history of the Battle of Vicksburg, we toured the battlefield, and we showed you guys some Civil War era firearms. We're going to do that a little bit more today, but our theme today is a little bit more of a personal touch, a little bit before the Civil War, about the Civil War, and a little bit after the Civil War. And everything that we kind of talk about will relate to something personal along our journey while we were in Vicksburg, Mississippi. But first off, for those of you that aren't familiar with us, we're the Edison Exchange in historic downtown Winsboro, Texas, where we specialize in vintage jewelry, coins, currency, bullion, Southwest art, Navajo rugs, Native American jewelry, Western art, Western antiques, as well as antique firearms made before 1898. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Because today's personal touch of an item involves a sword that we have that's going to our museum collection at the Harvey House Gallery, which we are going to be opening soon here in historic downtown Winsboro, Texas. We're excited about that. So we like showcasing and talking about the history of those items and relating to our journeys as we go along and talk about and discover history. Today we actually have this really interesting Civil War era sword. And it is actually marked with the manufacturer, which I've got to double check here, is Collins and Company from Hartford, Connecticut, and it's dated 1862. On the other side, it is marked Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham. I've heard it called Schuler, Hartley, and Graham, but Schuyler, Hartley, and Graham, I believe, is correct. And as you can see, what we're looking at, they actually did the acid-etched engraving that you see on the sword here. We're here with the Federal Eagle. And then on the other side, when we flip it over, it has the U.S. This would have, of course, been a Union, what we call a foot soldier sword. And this is actually a presentation sword. And there's a way that we know that is because the date with the manufacturer is 1862. And there's jeweler grade engraving here on the end, on the hilt. And as you can see, it shows it's a presentation. It has the gentleman's name in his unit, which is the 169th New York, in a presentation in 1862. So it's actually identified. We have some history here with the regiment it belonged to. And if you've ever seen the hilt on these swords, the handle is actually shark skin or sometimes stingray. And it's just a very interesting sword because we can actually trace it to a unit and an individual from the Civil War. And more than likely, a sword like this would have been other members of the unit pitched in together and bought this for this individual for some reason. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was used in action on a battlefield per se, but it does have Civil War history and has that personal touch to it. So another piece that has a personal touch here are these two firearms. Now, these are Civil War era, but they're not necessarily military-issued firearms. So let me explain about that real quick. This is a pretty cool gun if you've never seen one before. It's called a pepper box, and the reason is because it looks like a pepper grinder. It's a little bit fancier model. This is by Allen and Thurber. It says Allen's patent here on the side. This has this really cool ivory grip, and it actually has an internal hammer. It's percussion, and whenever you fire it, it spins the cylinder, and this is the hammer here that strikes your percussion cap, and it fires. And so I believe we've got looks like an 1837 patent here. This should date to the 1850s. And the reason it's personal is because a Civil War soldier, either North or South, may have actually carried a personal weapon like this that was older from a decade before, a few decades before, and carried a weapon like that into battle. So pretty neat. Wanted to show you guys that. Now this next firearm, which I actually like, Marathon. This is a Marathon, what we call a Navy model. This is a 36 caliber. These are sometimes called pocket navies because they look just like the Colt Navy revolvers, but it is smaller. Now, the thing about this is what you look for on these is this actually has a New York address. They like to use New York, even though they were based in New Jersey, because they thought New York was fancier. A lot of different manufacturers did that. Colt is guilty of it. Their manufacturing was in Hartford, Connecticut, and they used a New York address because they had an office there because they thought it would be fancier. On these earlier models, when I say earlier, we're going to be circa 1860 or early part. So this tells you that this gun was around during the Civil War and not later. This company actually would sell out in 1868, I believe, late 1860s at least. But this has 5 cylinders instead of 6. The later ones will have 6. This is 5. And so it's a pretty cool gun. But this would have been possibly for private purchase. Either an individual or a soldier, either side could have purchased this firearm and carried it into battle, or a civilian. So this is more personal because this would have been a firearm that someone during that era, during the Civil War, purchased, either carried it into battle or just an individual. This one has the longer barrel, which is more scarce, a 6.5-inch barrel. And so we wanted to show you guys that. So guys, I want to hop over to the Harvey House Gallery, and we're going to show you guys some bigger guns, literally. And so let's go take a look at that real quick. Okay, everyone, we've hopped over here to the Harvey House Gallery, and we're going to show you a few pieces that are going to our museum collection. And you're going to see they were too heavy for us to tote over to the store. And so let's take a look at those items. We're going to talk about the history of that. And then that will lead us into our next place that we visited while we were in Vicksburg, Mississippi, which was Cedar Grove, which is a historical mansion dating back to the 1840s. It was there during the battle, and we're going to talk about how that personal history with it ties in to what we're about to look at, which are Civil War era artillery and cannonballs. If you remember in our previous video in part 2 about the Battle of Vicksburg, we mentioned the siege and that there was a lot of artillery that was fired on the city during that siege. So we're going to take a look at some actual Civil War artillery that's going to the museum, and let's talk about it. So one of the more common artillery pieces that you would have seen during the Civil War is actually this parrot shell right here, and the bottom part here is called a sabot, and it's generally made of copper or brass or lead, and whenever it's fired, it expands, and the inside rifling of the barrel would actually whenever it expands, it would actually fall into those grooves within the rifling, and it would actually make those shells more accurate. Now, this one here is a cannonball. If you notice, it has a fuse in it, and I just want you to note, much more technologically advanced than the next one that we're actually going to look at. But whenever this explodes, it'd have pretty much a grape shot that would be on the inside, which would fire everywhere. Both these shells are Union made. This next one that we're going to look at, which is much larger, is a Confederate cannonball. And the first thing I want you to notice is how much more crudely casted this is. It's not finished out. And if you look here, the plug or the fuse is wooden. It's not as advanced as the Union shells were. So another thing to note on this is you see these sprues which are still on it. This was a very crudely casted in haste. It wasn't finished out. And even to this day, these little sprues almost look like little nails pop out. So you can see the difference in the manufacturing techniques, Union, Confederate. And so these are examples of the type of artillery and cannonballs you would have found on a Civil War battlefield. So when we visited Cedar Grove, which is, again, an 1840s mansion, there are cannonballs from the Battle of Vicksburg still stuck in the walls of that mansion, and we got to see that. So let's hop over, let's take a look at it, let's learn some history about it, a little bit of the personal history, and let's take a look at those cannonballs. That's just neat. While visiting Vicksburg, Mississippi, we had the opportunity to tour the historic Cedar Grove Inn. The oldest parts of Cedar Grove were built in 1840. It now acts as a bed and breakfast, and you can also take historical tours of the mansion. This Greek Revival estate is located in the historic Garden District and is on the National Register of Historic Places. The inside and outside of this mansion showcases Victorian opulence. Oak Grove was built between 1840 to 1852 by wealthy jeweler and businessman John A. Kling for his new bride, Elizabeth. After being married, John and Elizabeth toured Europe, and a lot of the furnishings in the home represent that tour of Europe, where she was able to buy anything she wanted to decorate the home. Whether you are staying at Cedar Grove or visiting, you can take in the history, the personal objects that are around the mansion, and you can dive into Civil War history. One interesting feature we were shown while touring the home was that since John was a jeweler, he had a custom strongbox that was disguised as a buffet in the dining room to store the family's silver. One architectural element that you'll notice as you tour the home is the red glass above the doors. As attractive as it may be from the inside, which looks red, from the outside it actually appears black. This was considered a luxury at the time with the color of the glass, but it also provided a function where it would block sunlight from coming into the home. As you tour the home and you take in the personal history and the Victorian luxury of this mansion, you also have to keep in mind the Civil War history involved with it as well. During the siege of Vicksburg, Cedar Grove also doubled as a Confederate hospital. Whether you're staying the night or just simply visiting, don't miss the room where Ulysses S. Grant is suspected to have stayed after the Union was able to capture the city of Vicksburg. One key feature of the mansion that stood out to me was actually that it bears the scars of the siege and Battle of Vicksburg. You will note a patched area on the front door of the mansion. This is damage left over from a Union cannonball that went through the front door during the siege of Vicksburg. The front room will actually have a cannonball that is still stuck in the wall, and if you look down at the floor, I really like this feature where they've encapsulated the damage as well as the cannonball in the floor of the room, and all this is from the battle or the siege of Vicksburg. And to me, that was one of the takeaways from the visit of the mansion, and to me, one of the more interesting parts that involves Civil War history. It is said that Cedar Grove survived the Battle of Vicksburg due to Elizabeth's relation to the famed Union general William Tecumseh Sherman by marriage. Essentially, Sherman is said to have warned Elizabeth about the upcoming siege that the Union Army planned. They were able to evacuate, and Cedar Grove was spared, while it was also used as a Union hospital and morgue after the city of Vicksburg was captured. One reason the cannonballs are still on display and preserved today is because Elizabeth insisted that they stay within the walls or the damage stay with the home to prove that the family fled for safety versus being warned early by Sherman. Overall, we enjoyed our tour of Cedar Grove. The tour guide had a lot of information, a lot of personal stories to share about the estate or the mansion there. Of course, there's a lot more in-depth information that can be found online. Cedar Grove has a website. But if you are into history, Victorian history, or Civil War history, it's definitely a spot you want to put on your checklist when visiting historic Vicksburg, Mississippi. Hey guys, I just want to say thank you for watching our video today and for supporting us. Just remember guys, the proceeds from the videos as well as our Facebook group that we're part of, Jewelry Hunters Live Sales, every Thursday night. We sell a great selection of jewelry and coins, and all the proceeds from those sales go to our operation cost at the museum. And guys, if you like the music that you heard during our video, all those songs are actually Edison Records. We like to feature the name of the song and a shot of the label at the end, and we record all those songs here at the store on this Edison A250. So if you like that, look at the end of the video. We like to give you the artist and the song, so you might discover something new in the music world as well while you watch our videos. But thank you guys. Like, share, and subscribe so we can keep doing more of these videos. And come see us at the Edison Exchange.